went to work. Come on. He's hit that sack. The Steelers win the football game. Let's go! Come get it. You know what it is.
This one is in the history books.
Here we go.
Welcome to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. I'm Missy Matthews. The Steelers are sitting in a very unfamiliar place right now. They're at the very bottom of the AFC North after dropping their last 3 games. Penalties, turnovers, and everything in between can be to blame. So it's no surprise that Coach Tomlin keeps talking about the September football things that he's seeing on tape in December. For more on what went wrong in Indy, let's send it over to Bob Pompeani, who's with Coach Tomlin. Guys.
Missy, thanks very much. We are here with head coach Mike Tomlin. Another difficult loss to get through, and I know after the game, Coach, you talked about changes. You talked about everything being on the table. Throughout the course of this practice week, what has that meant to you?
You know, we had to acknowledge our current state in our play and how to go about changing that. In some instances, we've been affected by attrition or player availability or lack thereof, and we're just not getting the type of cohesion that we need in those areas. So in some instances, it's about bringing the schematics to the current group in the effort to minimize some negativity, some lack of cohesion, some lack of communication. In other instances, it might be some guys playing more or some guys playing less. Mason Rudolph, for example, is being given an opportunity at quarterback, given an opportunity all week to prepare, and thus an opportunity to play. Excited about giving him that opportunity. And so, but it's those things. It's not only about division of labor and things of that nature, but just our approach to the week in terms of the emphasis that we put on some fundamental things that are not moving in the direction or at the trajectory that we would like.
What went into the decision to start Mason Rudolph?
You know, we're just interested in changing the consistency of the result, and the consistency of the result is we need more points offensively. And so Rudolph is a veteran guy, man, that's been in our program a long time, a capable guy. He's a guy that hadn't been given an opportunity. He's certainly deserving of one in an effort to change the outcome.
One thing that Rudolph does do is he can throw it deep. Would that be a bigger part of your playbook this week?
You know, that is in his skill set, but we're going to ask him to play a complete game. He is not a young guy. It's one of the things that made him attractive to us from a business perspective, man. We got 3 quarterbacks in our program that we believe are capable, 2 of which are veteran players. And so hopefully that's an asset under these circumstances.
We saw the offense get off to a pretty good start. You had 13 points right off the bat. You elected to take the ball when you won the toss. Was that by design?
Yes, we just wanted to be aggressive. We felt like we had a full week to prepare from a readiness perspective in terms of how we wanted to start the game. We wanted our actions to match our mindset in that regard. And by taking the ball as a component of that.
As the game went on, it seemed like Gardner Minshew got some opportunity to throw in the middle of the field. That's been a problem of late with tight ends. And I know you're very limited in terms of who you have playing defense, especially in the middle. How do you counteract that, knowing that Cincinnati may do the same?
You know, with a week to prepare, we're better positioned to do so. We were short going in, but we had an attrition component that occurred in game. KZ obviously got ejected from the game, and then Minka got hurt. And then at times there was a lack of availability with Trenton at safety as well. And so with the issues already going on at inside linebacker, it made some of that communication, some of that cohesion really challenging. All those things aside, man, 7 days to prepare like we've had this week. We look at the collection of men that we have available to us, and we formulate a plan to best utilize their talents, work to minimize that component of it again. But again, when things happen in game, you got to make adjustments on the move, and sometimes they are what they are.
You mentioned KZ in the hit. It's very rare you see guys ejected. You see it in college. When you saw that play, did you think it was worthy of an ejection? Only because the receiver's diving, he has nowhere to go to make a play.
You know, I just know how things work in the National Football League. It was a Saturday game. We were the only game on. I was told by the officials on the field that the decision came from New York in terms of the ejection, and sometimes that happens. Primetime television, only show in town, et cetera. It's just a component of professional football.
All right, let's talk about one other thing. And you had a chance to kick a field goal of 57 yards for Chris Boswell. Would have made it a one-possession game. You elected not to. Looking back on that decision, are you glad you made it the way you did?
I am. You know, the play before, we wanted to be aggressive and take a shot, and if that shot wasn't available to us, check the ball down and improve our field goal position. We didn't do that. We ended up throwing the ball out of bounds, and I didn't want to turn bad to worse from a field positioning perspective. Because we were down so many people on defense, particularly in the middle, as we just talked about, I wanted to protect that unit as opposed to apply pressure to that unit. And the field position component is a way of protecting that unit and keeping it a two-score game and working to keep the field position where it was in an effort to eventually reduce it to one and go on from there. Just didn't feel good enough about the current state of our defense, particularly at the safety position, to put them in harm's way, potentially with missing a 56, 57-yard field goal.
All right, Coach, when we come back, we'll talk about the upcoming opponent. Cincinnati comes to town. They've gotten some good performances from some people as backups. We'll talk about that, and the Steelers trying to end this three-game slide. All coming up with head coach Mike Tomlin. Missy, back to you.
All right, thanks, Bob. And the Bengals are the exact opposite of the Steelers. They've won their last 3 games, including 2 in overtime. Pittsburgh will be utilizing their depth chart at the safety position on Saturday. Not only is Mika Fitzpatrick out with an injury, but the NFL upheld the suspension of DeMonte Casey without pay for the remainder of the regular season. The 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show will be right back.
Welcome back to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.
Bengals quarterback Jake Browning is playing a lot different than he was when the Steelers faced him the first time in Week 12. He's the first player since 1950 to pass for over 1,000 yards and complete at least 75% of his passes in his first 4 starts. On Saturday, he'll be squaring off against Mason Rudolph, who hasn't started a game since 2021. And for more on how the Steelers can hopefully finish the season with a winning record at home, let's go back to Bob and Coach, guys.
Missy, thanks very much. It's the final home game for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the regular season. Cincinnati comes to town, and they are operating with a backup quarterback, like a lot of teams in the NFL these days, Coach. And Jake Browning's done a very good job. In fact, if you look at the numbers, he has a better completion percentage than Joe Burrow did. You guys handed him a loss. Ever since then, he's been good. What has he done taking over the reins and making a difference for Cincinnati?
It's not only what he has done, it's what they have done. He's completing the ball at a high rate because he's, doing a lot of rhythm passing and a lot of high percentage passing. I think that, by virtue of what they asked Joe to do, he takes more risk from a completion percentage standpoint. But that also minimizes negativity. He's done a really good job of taking care of the ball, and they've done a nice job of protecting him because of those things. And so they've done a nice job of just pivoting based on where their strengths are and not putting it all on the shoulders of the position in the way that they do when Joe Burrow is available to him.
Just a general question. The NFL has seen a lot of backup quarterbacks this year. Cleveland's on their 4th. Many teams have gone through multiple quarterbacks. I know they're valuable positions and assets to have, but how much more valuable are they, given the fact that most of them do play and play significant roles?
It's just been an interesting topic of discussion. It seems like with each year we do more to protect the position, and with each passing year it seems to be more injuries at the position. And so I know quarterback safety and quarterback health is a big topic of conversation in our business at this level, and it should be because of how significant those people are, not only to their teams, but largely to the game itself from an entertainment perspective. And so, it's challenging. There's a finite amount of quarterback talent. That's why when you have guys that can play, you got to be comfortable in terms of doing business with them. That's why we do some of the things that we do organizationally in terms of valuing veteran backups and continuity in terms of some of our business relationships at that position. We just came off of a game versus Indy. Minshew came from Philadelphia with that staff to Indy as another reflection of the value of continuity and things at that position to reflect how unstable things are in today's game. You
mentioned Jake Browning hasn't made many mistakes in the game that you beat Cincinnati in Cincinnati. It was Trenton Thompson who came up with a big interception. Those plays and for my money, that was the turning point of that game. Significant.
Both teams did a really solid job for most circumstances of taking care of the ball. That was significant because they were in scoring territory. Not only did we preserve 3, we preserved 7. And then the subsequent drive by our offense, I think, was ball control, touchdown drive that kind of changed the whole complexion of the game. And so it's not only about the turnover component of the game, but it's also what happens after, how you complement or support one another in the turnover game.
You're coming off a game against the Colts in which they ran the ball very successfully against you. You have Joe Mixon this week. I would imagine you're expecting a heavy dose of him.
We are. That's just our nature of our relationship with Cincinnati. A lot of ball goes through Joe Mixon, whether it's run or in the passing game, and we got to work to minimize his impact on the game. But I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about Brown, a young runner who's emerging for them and really emerging since our last game, coming on in a big way and being a component of what they do out of the backfield.
Defensively, Mike Hilton, guy you're very familiar with, is having a pretty good year. He's like 4th on their team in tackles, but he's making plays in the run game behind the line of scrimmage. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. How mindful do you have to be of watching him?
I'm not surprised at all. We're very familiar with Mike, not only in terms of playing against him, but obviously playing with him. The things that they do schematically to highlight his skill set are things that have our attention and have had our attention. And so there's an intimacy to these relationships. We know them, they know us. It makes it chess, not checkers, but it also makes it really exciting.
Like you, they have a couple of good edge rushers who can come after you. How do you scheme against them to try to keep them ineffective in getting to the quarterback?
An effective run game is the chief way. That's why we talk about Joe Mixon and his impact on the game. I'm sure they view our running backs and running game the same way. But aside from a solid run game, in one-dimensional passing moments, man, you got to have tackle plus. When you're talking about elite edge rushers, it's not just whooshing a guy well. It's throwing some schematics behind it, particularly in one-dimensional moments. And so in one-dimensional moments, it's reasonable to expect us to go the extra mile to minimize the impact of the edge guys in those moments. That's just prudent football.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about keys to this game as Cincinnati comes to town, and they've been hot of late at 8-6. Steelers right behind them trying to catch them. We'll talk about it when we come back. Missy, back to you.
Okay, guys, that sounds good. And in the month of December, the Steelers have never lost 4 games under Coach Tomlin. Since 2007, Pittsburgh is 44-24 in the month of December, the 3rd best record in the league. Coming up next, we profile the Steelers secondary coach, Grady Brown. Now it's time for this week's Yins Chat trivia question. Who has the most receptions in a Steelers game versus the Bengals? Najee Harris or Hines Ward? Find out after the break.
Welcome back to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.
Your Yins Chat trivia answer is Najee Harris with 14 receptions in Week 3 of the 2021 season. Each week, answer Steelers trivia and make game day picks for a chance to win signed helmets, jerseys, footballs, or even a trip to the 2024 NFL Draft. And answer the day's questions correctly and get double the points. Log into the Steelers mobile app and play for a chance at this week's prize, an autographed Joey Porter Jr. jersey. And speaking of Porter, he's being guided during his rookie season by veterans like Patrick Peterson and also his position coach, Grady Brown. After spending 20 years in the college ranks, Brown joined Pittsburgh's coaching staff in 2021. We had a chance to sit down with him to talk about his love of football and how his path to the Steelers included a familiar face.
Growing up where I come from, being good at sports is a way to be cool. In Birmingham, you played Little League park ball. So throughout park ball, I played defensive line and played center, actually. And then I made the transition to playing safety, actually, in high school. And so, like I said, I really believe, though, my background growing up as an interior player really helped me to understand the importance of tackling and getting off blocks and things of that nature when I got to high school and I transitioned to defensive back.
That transition would serve Brown well through his college career and well after.
Anybody that watched me play in college, they'll say that I was a really good player for where I played at Alabama A&M. I did play in the Arena League for 1 year, but I just realized that, hey, this is about as far as I'm going to go. And so I started my career as a graduate assistant, and then from there, my career just kind of took off.
Brown spent 20 years coaching in the collegiate ranks, including stops at Alabama State, Louisville, and South Carolina. But it was his first NFL internship that helped pave his way to Pittsburgh.
My first intern, I think, was in 2004 with the Seattle Seahawks, and that's where I met T.A., who may have been in his second or third year coaching the secondary. Then I did an internship with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2007, where Herm Edwards was the head coach at the time. Gunther Cunningham was the defensive coordinator. I can remember Herm Edwards taking time out where it was just he and I sitting down watching defensive backs, receiver one-on-ones. And Gunther Cunningham, like I said, learned a lot from him. So it was a great experience to be around guys that have been doing it for a long time. And even being around T.A., getting to know him, because obviously that helped me get in front of Mike T, I guess 3 years ago.
After 2 decades honing his craft in college football, his opportunity to break into the NFL came from a familiar face.
What led me here, if you go back to the intern opportunity with the Seahawks, then when T.A. had an opportunity to be the defensive coordinator for the Lions, he and I were in talks. There was an opportunity for me to join his staff at the Lions. And in retrospect, I kicked myself for not taking that opportunity. But I do trust the process. I do trust God that maybe I wasn't ready at that time. I don't know. Fast forward to, I guess, 2021 or so, whenever I interviewed, I guess the job came open and T.A. told Mike Tomlin that, hey, I tried to hire this guy in 2012. I think he's a sharp coach. Mike T brought me in on an interview, and the rest is history.
Let's go, man. Tackle that back. Who's going to tackle that back? Who's going to tackle that back today?
For me, it starts with tackling. There are some things that I know that I can teach. And there are some things that I just cannot teach. I can make you better at it, and I can enhance your ability to be sufficient at it. But if you're not willing to tackle, you're just not willing to tackle. The next thing I would say is you want a guy that fits that athletic mode. You want a guy with quickness, then speed, because it's about COD. It's about changing directions. We're working backwards and we're reacting to go forwards a lot of times. If I'm impressed, I have a box that I have to defend. I have a triangle that I have to defend. That takes a certain level of quickness. So I would go tackling, I would go quickness, then I would go speed. Then outside of that, I'll teach you everything else. If those things are in place, I believe I have the skill set and the experience to teach you everything else that you need to know.
For Brown, the message to his players extends beyond the field of play.
I owe everything that I have, positive or positive, to God, my wife, my family, my parents. And at the end of the day, I would hope my players look at me as a teacher, and I will hope that people know that I'm here to serve, not to be served.
Let's go. Welcome back. Let's go.
Well, it's hard to believe that Saturday marks the Steelers' last game of the regular season at Acrisure Stadium. Pittsburgh is 15-2 in regular season home finales under Coach Tomlin, which is tied for the best record in the NFL since 2007. And for more on how the Steelers can break their 3-game losing streak in the comforts of home, let's send it over to Bob and Coach for your keys to the game presented by your neighborhood Ford store. Guys.
Missy, thanks very much. Let's talk about some of the things you're going to be doing on Saturday. It's the final home game. I'm sure people want you guys to get back on the schneid, and this is a great opportunity to do it against a team in your division you've already beaten. Last week you guys talked about a lot of players, the urgency, the playoff factor involved here. I imagine that's even ramped up this week.
Even more so, obviously, not only because of the global positioning perspective, but just simply it's AFC North football. We have an opportunity to secure our second victory against a group that's defending divisional champs, and we don't take that lightly. There's familiarity in these relationships. There's depth to these relationships, and so it is a significant game. The intensity of these games are always ramped up because of that, familiarity, and I'm excited about watching our group play at that level.
Jake Browning's playing very good football right now. What do you have to do to stop him, at least contain him in the pass game?
We got to disrupt the normal flow of their assault and his assault. And they do a really nice job of changing the launch point, rhythm passing, and things of that nature, RPOs and things of that nature. And so they spin the dial some. It will require us to spin the dial some, which we did the last time. I'd imagine it's going to be more of the same. And for us, we can't allow him to operate in normalcy. And so we got to disrupt rhythm.
Your running game last week was not what you wanted it to be. What do you do to get it back? Because that oftentimes springboards the passing game.
You know, we got to control the line of scrimmage. Controlling the line of scrimmage is run game efficiency, but it's also just efficiency. We were penalized. I think we had 5 offensive penalties in the last game. And when you get behind the chains, you get somewhat one-dimensional. That's going to minimize your run game. That's going to get you in double pass mode oftentimes to minimize the component of possession and long. And so those are some of the things that happened last time that minimized our run game. Our run game needs to be the component that it was the first time we played those guys in Cincinnati.
And special teams, you guys play a lot of close games, it seems, with teams in your own division. We saw a block punt. You've had a lot of those this year. How significant will that be, given the fact you got 2 good kickers, too, on both sides of the ball?
It's important, particularly in these divisional matchups. We had a block punt in Baltimore, for example, that changed the complexion of that game. Here, we had a block punt last week. They gave us a leg up from a stop standpoint. And so I've been really pleased with the development of our special teams unit, in particular our block units. They've given us a lot of production and a lot of positioning.
All of those things are very important. Coach, all the best this week against the Bengals. That's going to do it for our show tonight. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of everyone here, Missy Matthews, head coach Mike Tomlin, I'm Bob Pompeani, wishing you a happy holiday and a Steeler win on Saturday. We'll do it again next week for another edition of the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.